Hello everyone. So we are live with Check, and I'm just gonna wait for a few seconds so that we have a static number of active participants. I see that the number is still increasing, and yeah, it is still increasing. I'm just gonna wait for a few seconds before we start. So in case you know few of your friends who are still on the lounge or some other session who are interested about learning tests, please ask them to join this session. We are starting shortly. So we have Check today, and she'll be talking about how to mock well in test, traps and pitfalls when using mock and Pytest. And she says writing tests are important. When your Python application depends on external API, we frequently use mock in Pytest. However, there's a lot of traps in Pytest and mock that make it a bit tricky. I have made those mistakes in the past, and I will show you the most common ones and how to avoid them. So, Check, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. And yeah, so this is my talk about how to mock well in test. So just some housekeeping thing. I know that some people like to take notes, and sometimes if you see a slide, you really want to keep it, and then you would be busy, taking pictures or things like that. So don't worry, I have it all covered for you. So because you can see that at the top of the slides there is a link, so you can find the slides there. And also I've shared with the organizers with all the materials and also the link to the slides as well. So I'm sure that you will find it somewhere. So don't worry if the slides go a little bit too fast, that just sit back and relax and enjoy the talk. And also I have some contact information there as well, so in case you want to ask me questions afterwards, or if you want to get the code or get the slides afterwards, then you can also find me on Twitter and ask me. So yeah, all you need is the first slides and just yeah, and then you can enjoy the talk. So I would start my talk now, and before that I would like to introduce myself. So I'm Cheuk. I love open source. I'm involved in a few open source projects in the past, and also now I'm super lucky that I work for a open source project. It's Terminus DB, which is a open source graph database that can work like Git. So yeah, it sounds amazing, right? So if you want to know more, if you're working with data and want to find a good data storage, then you can talk to me on Twitter as well. So also, I'm an organizer of different events. I love sprints. Because I'm an open source fan, right? Right. So that's why I love sprints. I also help organizing EuroPython. I'm lucky to be in the board the coming year, so I will be organizing EuroPython in the coming year. Also, PyData Global is happened last month, and I help organizing as well. It was great conference. And the last one, PyJamasConf, it just happened, actually just finished an hour ago. So we have been streaming for 24 hours, so I'm a bit tired, and so my brain works a little bit slower to like now. So please bear with me. Um, and the next thing is that I would give tutorial online on Twitch. I'm a streamer. Well, not a professional one, but I love streaming. I love talking about Python with people. So yeah, that's how I do it now, since we are all like staying at home most of the time. So you can actually go there, follow me, and just click on the notifications. So when I go live, I'm giving a tutorial, you can join. Okay, so first question for every one of you. You can type in the chat and share. Do you write tests? So please be honest, because I know that we all know it's kind of like written in the developer 101, right? You have to write tests, especially if you work on open source project. Why? Because well, writing writing code and making a feature, for example, to be working is exciting, right? We all love to do it. That's why we become developers. But the thing is, like, well, me actually, of course, like a lot of the time is that, okay, it kind of works on my computer, right? It kind of works. So, okay, it's done, right? Push. And then call it a day. No, you have to write tests because when you're working with people, even maybe they're your colleagues, or maybe if it's an open source project, anyone could be a contributor. They may want to add another feature or fix some other bugs. And if you don't write the test, then maybe accidentally they will change the behavior of the feature that you added, and it may actually create troubles. So if you don't write tests, actually it's like putting your work out there without any safety, without any guard to make sure that your work will stay safe, to make sure that your work won't be accidentally changed by someone else. So that's why writing tests is very important when you're working with other developers. Um, so one of the things that is a very basic testing method, I would say, is unit test. So as its name suggested, all the tests actually is kind of like a unit. It's independent cell. So it only got one job. For example, I would make this analogy. I love this analogy. It's like the whole application is like a big machine, right? And then your function inside, or your class or whatever, that is a component inside, right? So it's like a gear inside. So this test actually is just testing that part of the machine is actually working. So when you encounter a problem with the machine, instead of going around and see which part is, maybe rusted or broken down, you you can see that maybe there are like some LED lights that you see that which one ran from green to red. Then you know that that part is broken, so I can just fix that part, and I know where is the place that things went wrong. Um, so to write a unit test, of course, test would have a test function there that it would take an input and take the function that it want to test, and then it would just execute it, put the input in the function, execute, and see whether the output is actually what you're expecting. So the outcome of this test function will be either a pass or a fail. Uh, or there could be an error that basically this function just broke down. Well, of course, in Python, you'll see any, like, if you make a mistake in Python, of course, you will have an error in Python, right? So um, Pytest is actually a testing framework, and it's quite popular. A lot of us are using Pytest. It makes writing unit tests very simple, very easy. Also, because it provide other features like patching, mocking, which we will cover a little bit later in the talk. And also parameterize is a very good tool as well, especially when you have a lot of different cases you want to test. Especially in data science projects and stuff like that. So so it's really flexible. It's really good. A lot of plugin is popular, so it's a really good choice if you're just starting to learn more about testing and write tests. There are the documentation there, so it's just like other Python libraries or Python package. You just pip install it. So it's very straightforward. It also provides a command line command that is Pytest. So you can see that after you install, you can run Pytest -- version, which just makes sure that Pytest command works, and it will show you the version of your Pytest. So this is kind of like a 101 example of how a test works. So I have it actually in a Jupyter Notebook, where I use Jupyter Notebook because I can switch between the tab. I hope you're seeing it right now. If not, the host, please jump in and tell me, because I'm not looking at my, what you're seeing right now. I'm just looking at my presentation. So hope it works. And okay, so example one here, I just copied and pasted there and save. So this one, actually, I modify a little bit. So this is kind of like a very simple thing, right? And serve beer. So I use this as an example because I'm based in London, and then going to the pub and have beer is kind of like a cultural thing here. So well, of course, it's alcoholic, right? So if you are a kid, if you're below the legal age, which is 18 here, then you shouldn't drink beer and you shouldn't be served a beer. But if you're an adult, of course, you can have a beer as long as you pay. So we check whether age is less than 18, and then if someone is, age is 25, then of course have beer. If this is not 30, for example, it's like a 5-year-old kid, okay, then, well, of course you can't have beer. And so I would just, so you see here, I have all the example here, and I have actually PyTest installed here, so I can just see if I have the PyTest. yep, it showed me the Pytest version 5.4.3 here. So I have Pytest. So what I can do is to do Pytest and then example 1.py. So I just run this file, and then it run 2 tests and it all passed. Everything's good, right? So of course, if, for example, if I have a man child, so someone is 30 years old but behaving like a child, so should I serve this person beer? Well, I think like we don't care whether you behave like an adult, right? As long as you have an ID that you're, above the legal age, we'll just serve you beer. Um, so yeah, like well, if I expect that this bartender, because you look like behaving like a child, I shouldn't serve you beer as well. Is not the same as what the function is outputting, then of course it will fail. But here's the catch here. So what if I have someone that didn't tell us the age? Okay, none. What would happen? It will got broken down, right? So you can see that we have an error here, a type error. So, and then in this case, you have to put down if age is none, or okay. So yeah, just to make sure that, oops, okay, I can do it this way. Yeah, just to make sure that if someone doesn't tell you the age, you shouldn't serve them beer because they may be lying, right? So maybe this is not a child, but maybe a teenager want to try doing cool stuff, cool adult stuff, and refuse to tell your age. Just hopefully you'll be fooled, but we are not fooled. So okay, so that's how it works. Let me save this code. Okay, so this is just an example of how PyTest work. It's quite cool, right? So yeah, I've just shown you how to run the whole test, but also you can just run a function. You just use colon and then type the name of the function. For example, test serve be illegal. So I can do this. So maybe I would clear it first so you can see. And then colon, and then the name of the test itself. And it will just run one test. So instead of 2 passed, it's just 1 passed. Okay. So that's that. Exception. So I've shown you that sometimes we will have an error, right? If we forgot to cover the case, which will actually eventually break stuff. But sometimes we are expecting the program to break, right? Because, for example, here, let's go back to okay, we just check the age. If someone doesn't tell us the age, this serve beer function will just basically broke down, and maybe there'll be an alarm for some like developer come in and fix stuff. So we're expecting this to fail. Then yeah, then what should we do? How can we check whether something that actually we expect it to fail, instead of getting like, I want, if something is meant to fail, for example here, that 1 divided by 0, of course we will get a 0 division error. So I'm expecting it. How can I have this as a pass? So let me show you how it works. So for example here, that if this is a very awkward example, but this is very straightforward. So this my func do one thing. It's just give you an error no matter what. And the error I have like exception 1, 2, 3 raised. So whenever I call this function, I would just have an error no matter what. I'm not doing anything. I just run this function and I will have an error. For example, I just run it. You see? It's always an error because this function just gives me an error. So how can I test that? Oh, actually, I'm expecting an error. If there's an error, I'm happy. So this is how you do it. How you do it is to use a Pytest racist. So we just put that, okay, we will expect there will be an error that is raised, is a value error, and you can also match the error message as well to make sure that, well, because you have a lot of errors in your program, right? You want to make sure that this is the exact error that I'm expecting. So let's see how it works. Let me clear it again, and I run it again. And this time I got a pass instead of an error. Life is good. So yeah. We are all happy. Yeah. Also, there's another way the Pytest provide is called Xfail. It's kind of like a decorator that can mark your test is failing and nothing to worry about at the moment. But I won't cover in detail. You can read about the documentation of Pytest to learn a little bit more. So sometimes, in some cases, making a unit like this. So far our life is happy, right? But sometimes it's not the case. Making a unit is not always easy. Because, for example, if I'm testing some external things, because sometimes the program can't contain itself. It depends on some external process. For example, if your program is using some sub-processing, or if your program is making some API calls, that it depends on the other side of like where you request your API call, for example, your backend engine, right? Or if you're calling a sub-processing or even calling a local path, that, well, things may break because, well, it may be, for example, a path, it may work on your computer, but it's not the same as something run on Travis. So that's why we have Mock.patch, and these are like the common methods that's provided by Mock.patch, and they're all very useful. The most common one may be like set art, so arter, like yeah. So this is just like setting, replacing a value of some or replacing a value with something else. So we'll see that in action. So here, this one is an example 3. So I will show it in Jupyter Notebook so it's easier to see. Right. So this is a very simple example that it actually uses the path of your home directory. So as you may know, that home directory is OS dependent, or even like is machine dependent, because, well, you may have your username there in your home directory. So everyone got a different one. So how can I make sure that if I run a test in my computer, you run the test in your computer, and we run the test on Travis, they won't break this test. So what we do is that we, for example, this is the function that uses the path.home. So it is really depending on where you run it, right? So what I do is that I would use the mock return function that return a path object that is just every time the path objects would just so this path object is just a path that is ABC, and we patch it. So when we call path.home, we would the attribute of path, one of them is home here, so you can see that's how it's used. So instead of giving me the path.home, which is OS dependent or machine dependent, I will always return this object, which is ABC. So when I use this get SSH here, then I will have ABC, and then I will add SSH as a subpath. So I will have ABC .ssh. So it would be the same every time. It doesn't matter where you run this test. So let's see that, make sure that it works. So example 3, yes, it passes. So there isn't much to see here because, well, when it passes, it doesn't show any message here. So how about we just change it to AB? Then you will see that what is going on here. So let's run this again. And yep, you see that now there is a assertion error, which means that this assert is assert is like not it's not doesn't pass. It's not echoed. So you can see that. So instead of patching, so you can see here. So instead of patching the home directory to be ABC, it become AB. So that's why it doesn't work. So yeah, it really depends on here that your mock return is doing the right thing. Okay, so I'll put ABC here back again. So yeah, this is how you patch something using the Mock.patch. But in this example here, so actually you have to mock it yourself. Remember, we have to write this mock return ourselves, right? Sometimes you don't want to do that. Why? Because it could be, if you want to patch something, for example, there's an object in request. Well, you have to look at what an object you're expecting from this this library, right? For example, in this path library, we have to return a path object when I call path.home. How can I know that? I have to go to the the GitHub repo to see like, oh, like what is this path at .home and what is it doing. It's not nice, and it wastes a lot of my time if I'm just like want to write the test and need to do a quick monkey patch. So that is this magic come in. Is called mock. So this mock library is work like magic. So sometimes called magic mock. It will actually like Python itself will detect, oh, what is the like expected. For example, this path.home, what are we expecting to get? So it will know that, oh, we're expecting a path object, so I'll patch it with a path object that is the very basic, sometimes empty, but it will work. So let's see it in action. So this one, this is only a part of the example. So the full example is in the link here, which I have saved it in example 4. So here you can see, well, it's quite long. That's why I didn't put them all in the slides. And you can see that, well, basically what it does is that I would make an API call to google.com and make a query. And I'm expecting to get a response with the content in here. So now I want to mock the response, and the content will be elephant. So this is what it is doing, right? So in a nutshell, I just gotta go quicker because I'm afraid of the time constraints. But yeah, so this is how it works. And actually, I can run to show you that it works. But again, it won't be much to see because if it passes, it just passes, right? So yeah, you can actually have a deeper dive on it, and you can see that we are patching the request library here. That well, you don't have to worry about this like race for status, but the key thing here is mocking the request.get. So the request.get will be replaced by a mock response here. So the mock response is actually here that it returns this mock response, so we can use it. So yeah, so all this code, you can find it in my GitHub repo, which I've shared the link with the organizers. Hopefully they will share it somewhere. So now come into this Mock.patch decorator. So you can see in this example here, how to use this patch is actually very, very easy compared to the monkey patching example that I showed you before. It's just a decorator that is mock, and mock is actually, you don't even need to pip install it because it comes in the unit test standard library. So it's come with all the Python, well, at least the newer versions. So yeah, you just call it and then use it as a decorator. It's really nice. But there is a catch. So this is, I'm going to dive into a error that I got before that really bugs me out. Like I really like struggle, and like I don't know why it doesn't work. And it's a funky behavior of this patch. So I gotta show you. So this work, so don't blink your eyes because you would miss it. So let me close the other thing so it won't distract you. So I have A here. So A is just very simple. It's just some class, like, well, you have write program like this before, right? So you create a class, and then you have a Thunder init. And so this, because it's an example, it did nothing except it just print out that this is a some class object. So whenever you create a real some class object, this will print out. So you know that is a real some class object. So A is that. B, just import A, because B has only one function, and this function, what it does is that it will do a some class to create a some class object, and then it will just say object created, so you know that this function has been executed. So I want to now test this some function. So let's have a look here. So yeah, I import, of course, B from some func. Also, I need a mock, so I import that. So I have mock.patch. So okay, A some class, because some class is in A, right? So yeah, and I patch it. So I call some func. Well, this is not really a test, right? Because, well, assert false is always false, so this test will never pass. But like I said before, if it passed, there's nothing to see. So that's why I make it fail all the time. And I'm using this mock, I create a mock object, which is called mock func, to patch A dot some class. So some class should be patched by some mock object, right? Some mock func. and then I call some func. So it should really not create this some class object. So what I'm expecting is that this won't get print out, right? So if it works, then if the patching works, then this line won't get print out. So let's see if that's true. So let me clear it again and run the example 5. Okay, so yeah, it fails. It's expected. So let's see. Okay, we only have object created, so it works. We don't have some class. Some class has been mocked, so which is good. We want to patch that out, right? Okay, so this is this is always good, always fine, except sometimes you don't import things like this. Sometimes I like importing things like this because, well, I don't want to call a some class all the time because I use some class quite a lot. For example, if it's not that simple, maybe I use some class a lot. So I don't want to write a some class all the time. So that's how I do it. So this time, I would do the same thing, I just want to mock out the a.sum class. So let's see what's going on here now. I run it again, and oops, why there's still this sentence getting print? Some class should be patched. Why is still creating a real some class object? I don't want that to happen. Why? Okay, let's have a look at why. Because instead of import A, now I import some class from A import into B. So now some class actually, the namespace of some class is actually in B. So but there's also another object called some class in A. So there's actually two namespace here. One is a.some class, which belongs somewhere, belongs to A, right? But this one that you want to patch, that actually some function call is not a.some class, is a some class within B. So what I should do is that I should patch, instead of a.some class, I should patch b.some class. Let's see if it works. So let's run this again. And yes, that is gone. And now some class is not created anymore, and it's got patched by this mock func. So yay, so it works again. This is so subtle and this is so tricky, and it scares me a little bit at the beginning. So yeah, if you're encountering similar thing, then maybe it's because of the namespace thing. Here is actually really good explanation of it. It's from the Python official documentation itself. So have a read. It may help you when you're using mock. Um, so yeah, so it's a very it's only half an hour talk, so it's quite short, but I would give you, so I hope at least you have these three takeaways. So first, invest in testing, because like I said at the very beginning, testing is quite important. It's as important as your code, because you want to protect your code in the future, right? The second is that find the right tool for testing. So I've briefly introduced you to Pytest, introduced you to Mock, but there are so many testing tools in the world. For example, we just had a talk by Zach, which is the co-developer of Hypothesis. So Hypothesis is another tool for testing. So I won't go into the detail. You can actually, if you Google it, you will find it, right? So just type Hypothesis Python. So yeah, find the right tool for testing. So maybe if Hypothesis would help you to test some, to find the edge case to help you to test your code. So yeah, just find the right tool. Uh, and then the third thing, right, is actually what I'm doing here is to share your experience in testing. So how I encounter my problem before with this so subtle little trick that actually break my test is that I met someone in the Python community. Back in the day, we can still meet in person. There's a meetup, and then I went and I met some more experienced Python developer, and they teach me about this thing, and then tell me that, oh, actually your namespace is a bit messed up. So yeah, help each other. That's why Python is so awesome and amazing, and we are all helping to make Python great. And by sharing your experience, teaching others, so everyone can be everyone's teacher, right? So when you encounter some problem, when you have solved it, you have experience to share. You can give a talk, write a blog post, answering people's question on forums, anything that you feel comfortable doing. So that's the end of my talk. And so if you have any questions, I don't know whether I have time to answer it, but I'm always available on Twitter if you want to find me. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Check. If we just have one question coming in from the participants, and it came very early during your talk, so I think it's already answered. And the question is by Priya Brata, and Priya Brata says, any framework for creating mocks or automated PyTest?
Any framework to automate PyTest. Okay, so what I usually would do is that, to of course, still have to write the test. It's very difficult to automate the test, right? So that's kind of like a developer stream that we don't have to write the test. Hypothesis that I mentioned actually would help you a little bit because instead of writing all the case you have to test, so hypothesis is actually something called a property-based testing. So instead of listing all the case that you have to test, it will find the case to test for you. So it kind of already did some heavy lifting, so you have to do like a little bit less than normally what you would do. But you have to learn how to use it, and also, you have to get used to it. Uh, but after you have write the test, we would usually put that in the integration test. So that's why we run the test on Traverse. In Python world, what we usually do is to use talks, which create a separate Python environment, kind of like spinning up a new VM to test your code. So usually we would combine the power of talks and Traverse, and every time we make some changes to the code, the test will be run automatically on Traverse, which you push your code on GitHub and it will have a hook to Traverse to run it to test it, right? So this is how you got your, like I said, safeguard your code. So when someone make a change, then they would run this test on Traverse automatically, and then before it got merged, then you see that whether it passed all the test or not. So if it doesn't, then maybe you should ask the contributor to have a look, or maybe you help them to have a look to see why it breaks all the tests that you write. Maybe they have changed something that they shouldn't. So that's how it works in the open source world.
Thanks a lot, Check. Thanks for joining in. And everyone who is listening right now, feel free to go to Zulip. She will be present on Zulip if you have any questions regarding the talk. And she already shared all the resources. So we'll try to share the slides on the AirMeet chat as well as on the Zulip. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.
See you. Take care.